Welcome to the Cocoa Recovery Podcast.
The Cocoa Recovery Podcast presents the conversations of an informal group of friends gathered over coffee to discuss their current experience in recovery. The simple purpose of this podcast is to be helpful by sharing the realities of people living in recovery. The hosts and guests may or may not be practicing members of 12-step programs. The Cocoa Recovery Podcast is not affiliated with any organization, institution, or facility, neither endorses nor opposes any causes or approaches to recovery and rehabilitation. Whatever is expressed in the podcast represents our individual experiences and opinions as of today. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Pirate Mike.
And I'm Carbs.
And I'm Barbie.
And joining us tonight, we're very excited to have our friend Rio T.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Rio.
I believe you're here.
How's it going?
Yeah, we've been looking forward to this episode where you're going to be our guest.
Wow, thanks, guys.
It's our first episode with a guest, and we thought this is going to be it's our Mother's Day episode. And so what better episode to have you come on and discuss parenting and recovery.
Yeah, thanks. Wow, the toughest part, the toughest aspect, right?
Yeah.
How was it? I mean, like, there's a question that we all want. I mean, like, I guess what I wanted to ask you was like, what was it like before and now that you're in recovery? How did you navigate yourself? Well, there was when I was still out there, when I was in recovery yet, there were two aspects of my parenting, right? When it wasn't I helped raise three stepkids from my previous partner. And I remember how, these children were very small. The youngest at the time was 4 years old. So 4, 5, and 6. And I remember like trying to be the best stepmom, even if I was still drinking and using and all that. I'd always help them with their homework. I'd make sure they were fed and all that. But of course, having the disease of addiction, it got in the way. Like there were times that I prioritized buying drugs or buying alcohol rather than filling the pantry with food, right? So there were days that, my partner and I, we would sacrifice, okay, let's not eat so the kids could eat. There were days like that. It was tough, right? Like I tried to juggle in my heart of hearts, I wanted to be that good parent. Even if they weren't my kids, I really fell in love with them, but I had a disease. And sometimes most of the times that addiction took over. So it's like my priorities were really out of whack, right? So tuition fees were paid for. If there wasn't food in the table, sometimes it would be tuyo and rice, right? I'll tell the guy, hey, let's not, let's sacrifice eating out, right? But there was always a grande, tuyo and rice were my grande for the parents, right? Okay, we're gonna drink. It's our consolation prize because we sacrificed eating, so at least we could drink and stuff like that. But it was very hard because it was sad. It was very painful to see that, oh my gosh, right? Like, what am I doing? I took in these kids and I can't provide as well as I want them. Right? Yeah. And there was also one time that, of course, we were so high. And I remember my ex, no? I remember this clearly. I was actually thinking about this earlier before I came on. That I remember he would teach her how to roll a joint. And she was what, like 6, 7 years old, and he'd be like, "Oh, it's so cool." And me, I'd be like, "Is this wrong? I mean, isn't this wrong? Like, what am I doing? What are we doing, right?" So like, he'll be like, "Oh, Dada wants to smoke." So like, he'll hand her the pipe, and she'll be the one to put the bud in, right, the weed in and stuff. And I would laugh, but I would be afraid. Na parang, holy, like this kid's still young. Like, what are we doing, right? And I would ask him, like, hey, I don't think this is right. And he'd be like, okay, okay, sorry. But I mean, I spoke to these kids just recently, because I've reconnected with them, and I asked, do you remember those days? And she was like, yeah, I do remember. So it was very dysfunctional.
Mhm.
A lot of mistakes were made. There were things that I wouldn't have wanted them to see, like the fighting, the crashing. When we would be burning out from or crashing
Yeah.
from the booze, having hangovers, of course, we'd be moody or
Hmm.
masungit and stuff, and
Yeah.
our
Just
temper
unavailable.
or unavailable. That was the worst.
That was the worst. Yeah.
And that's how I was with my own kids, right? So I'm a single mother,
Mm-hmm.
and before I got clean and sober, I was very unavailable.
To your kids.
Very selfish, yeah. To my kids, like, you know, uh, gosh, guys, I didn't think it would be so emotional, naman. But
I mean,
yeah, but like that, like I'd always prioritize myself rather than them. At the time, I had two little girls, right? And they'd be looking for a mom. Their dad wasn't available because we had separated already. And of course, I'd always say like, oh my gosh, like they don't have a father. I'm not around. And I knew this. I knew this. But still, I was just so selfish. That's what my addiction did to me. It made me very selfish, self-centered. I neglected them. I didn't make time for them. And these are the things that it's part of my regrets. It's part of the I wish I didn't do list. Whole list, right? Yeah.
That's interesting
That's
though. You said that you were aware even when you were actively using and drinking.
yeah.
You were aware of what you're doing and how you were being unavailable to the kids.
Yeah. And that's the
That's
thing. That's
yeah.
how it is. Like when I get guilty about it, I'd use more to cover for that, to cover
Mm.
up rather than correct what I was doing wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
like that
That's
cycle,
Mm.
right? Like you drink and then you realize that you feel guilty, right? And there's that shame. And then because of the shame, you drink again. And then there's that endless cycle.
yeah,
Yes,
but
yeah.
in between that, diba, you like, for example, like what when I would do, like, oh shit, I drank again and I'm hungover or like something like I would try to do something good just to make up for it,
Compensate.
Oh,
to compensate. Like, okay,
Yeah.
I'll do the laundry or like I'll cook for you guys, woo, like that, and then like the whole thing will start again, just so
Yeah.
that it's a little bit of consuelo, if you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying, like for
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
make myself feel better. See how
Yeah.
selfish? It's to make myself
Yeah.
feel better, and yet I'm not. There's no acknowledgement of what these little ones feel.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But as long
But
as
then,
I'm happy,
Yeah.
you'll be okay also because I'm gonna
yeah,
feed
but
you, I'm gonna clothe you, I'm gonna, whatever.
yeah, but that's the thing. Like with me naman, like I would think I would make myself believe that the little stuff I do, like, oh, I went home anyway, we did homework together. And so that means I'm allowed to leave again. But
Mm.
basically, if you look at it, like I was with them like what, 30 minutes out of 24 hours?
Yeah,
And in my head, it was okay already because I spent time with them. So I'm entitled to go out.
Mm.
Do my thing.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's
It's like
interesting
Yeah.
that you also, I mean, obviously like odd one out in this space, right? I'm having a conversation with three mothers who are talking about what it was like. I had a stepdaughter when I was, before I got sober the last 3 years, and I'm thinking about it, whether or not I felt as if I was falling short of obligations, and I don't remember whether it was an active thought. I don't want to say it's like a fundamental difference between like dads and moms. Who knows, maybe it is, but it could also just be me, right? I just remember that when I was getting fucked up, it was more, okay, we'll start drinking when, she's supposed to be in bed already. And then every time she came out,
Mm.
just bring her back in, or like, just don't act too much the fool.
Yeah.
Although as things progressed, with my ex-wife and I, like we were, when we were drinking daily, more and more we were just doing embarrassing shit around the kid. You know, I'm picking her up from school or dropping her off and being drunk, and it just didn't cross my mind. Like as long as I could still do it, I never felt as if I was like not fulfilling my duty.
Yeah.
No.
But see, that's what our addiction tells us. Na you're
Yeah.
okay. You're okay. As long as you're doing what you're supposed to do. But then I like what you said that, you know, but in time, it just progressed to something more.
It just progressed to something more.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I got lost in the fog. But then my wife now, you know, she talks about the mom guilt, which is
Yeah.
not
Yes.
Yeah.
something that obviously I live with. And so there's that running track of like, is it enough that they were fed or clothed or breathing today? Sometimes yes, but then sometimes no.
But Mike, with your own kids, like did you have that bad guilt as well?
You know, only now, because so both of my kids were born when I was already sober.
Ah, okay.
So I didn't have like the guilt of, but you know, I didn't have the guilt of like, well, I did this when I was fucked up and then they saw it. But it was the not being emotionally sober. So if
Yeah.
anything, like the
Mm.
self-pity and the guilt kind of, I'd get harder on myself when it comes to self-pity because like, yeah, I'm not drinking or using anymore, but I'm still being violent. I'm still acting out in rage, right? I'm
Yeah.
still like,
Projecting. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So there are times when, you know, I mean, my kids and I, we have open dialogue. And so even with my own recovery and things that they've seen and their feelings, and we're all processing that openly, trying to meet them right in the way they can communicate or conceptualize it. But sometimes they'll bring up shit that happened like a couple of years ago, you know, and I'll be like, like it hurts, you know,
You
and they're like,
can.
oh, well, you're not that person anymore. But I'm like, I just wish that like we wouldn't have to talk about it again,
That's it.
you
See,
know?
but that's the thing. That oh my gosh, that's the thing. Like I was just remembering how, yes, I remember what I did during those years. And I know that what I was doing was wrong, not right. But see what I'm only starting to understand now, and I'm already like 6 years into my sobriety, how much it affected my children because they remember. See,
Yeah.
I got
Yes.
clean when my eldest was 7, and then 6, and then my youngest was 2. So she hardly remembers anything, right? But the first two, they're aware. And it's not just my drug use or my alcoholism. It's the poor decisions that I've made, the people I surrounded myself with. You know, now it's coming out, and I see that it's affected them, the way I behave, right?
Yes.
And yeah, just the other day, my kid was telling me that there's this man that she saw him recently, and she's like, "Oh, mom, I hate that guy. I hate that guy. Um, I want to beat him up." And I said, "How come?" And she said, "Because I remember when I was a baby, he was here in our house and he pointed a gun at you." And I was like, "What?" I had no, it wasn't, I'm like, "What
Wow.
do you mean?"
Yeah.
You didn't remember.
You weren't aware.
I didn't remember. And this isn't the first time she told me this. And I was like, "What do you mean, GP? How can you do that in front of me?" And he's like, I'm like, "Why did he do that?" And she said, "Because she said that she was around 3 or 4. And I was reprimanding her. And the guy got, I guess, annoyed with the noise or what. And he pointed a gun at me. So I said,
Oh
"What did
my
you do?"
gosh.
No, I said, "What did I do?" Then she said, "Well, you started to cry." And I started to cry. And that's it. And so imagine and she's 12 today.
Yeah.
So can you
Hmm.
imagine what trauma she has?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Carry
Just
that with her.
to carry that with her and to remember it so clearly. Now, I believe her. I believe her because it sounds like something that it sounds like a situation I got myself into anyway.
Yeah.
Right? Just
Mm-mm.
things I've done. But
Mm-mm.
you know, for my kids. And I remember also early on with my eldest who was the most affected by me being absent. I remember I was barely a year clean and sober, and we were lying down side by side, and I had asked her, I go, remember before when I wasn't around much, and that you would chase me and stuff out the door, I She goes, yeah, mom, I remember that. And I said, well, I'm really sorry for those times that happened. And, I just want you to know that I'm trying to change for the better now. And I promise you, I'm going to just better myself every day. And then she said, it's okay, mom. I love you. We were like, like I knew she was crying because I was crying, and you could feel like, your bodies are against each other, and you could feel her
Mm.
shaking. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I'm asking at the time she was 8 or 9. I was asking her to forgive me for all those stupid stuff. But she forgave me,
Mm.
she forgave me. And it's such an amazing feeling because none of these kids deserve what I put them through, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I carried that shame for so long. I carried that, and like you guys said earlier, that's how I masked that guilt and the shame, just by taking more and taking more. Instead of addressing the issue and changing myself, I just
Right.
drowned myself. So that addictive cycle is just really nuts. It's really nuts.
Yeah.
The shame that we carry, though, it's like I didn't see how much that also affects the kids, right? My inability to forgive myself.
They see that, huh? They
They see
catch
that, and
catch it.
it creates more of a distance. So I mean, I think it's a blessing. Like I hope, right, that you're talking about having a relationship with your daughters now that you can
Oh yeah.
connect with them.
Mm.
And like for me, I hope that that's been enough, because I think that if there was still some kind of a distance, which can be I'm either fucked up or into myself, or even if I'm just in too much self-pity, then
Yeah.
I'm unable to connect with them, and whatever trauma it is that they experienced just by being with me, they get to carry that alone if I'm not connecting with them, and
Yes.
that's even worse.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for a
Yeah.
while, like I had guilt too, even when I had my own kids. The family that I have now, the previous family, like when it ended, I not only lost my stepdaughter, right, but then my ex-wife also miscarried, like right around the time I was in the
Mm.
hospital, I think.
Sorry.
Anyway, whatever. But I carried the guilt of that experience so much, so that it was a mark. I thought that I wouldn't be able to deserve to have kids again. I really fucked that up. And there was so much just like self-flagellation
Yeah.
Yeah.
towards the lost baby, like that ghost I carried him with me for years, had
Yeah.
him, like I got a tattoo just so that I would always remember it. Once I would always remember him, but then also so that I wouldn't forget, and it took
Mm-hmm.
me years in recovery to before I could actually forgive myself. So sometimes like in shares, we'll talk about how like the first few years in AA, it felt like this cross that I had to carry. Like that's all part of it. Like I have to be sober. I have to continue to attend these meetings because I killed this fucking baby.
Oh,
And that's just the piece of shit that I am, and this is the cross that I have to bear. And there's no recovery in that, right? There's
yeah.
just
Yeah.
me taking it a step at a time, a day at a time, because I think
Yeah.
I have to keep punishing myself.
Yeah.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
also these kids, right? I mean, not to say anything, but yeah, because my kids are older
Mm.
than all of yours combined, right? I mean, like all your kids are medyo young pa, right? My kids, kasi they're older. Mine is turning 18 and the other one's turning 15. And they can express to you, like they can tell you all, like, like I remember this is when I knew that I really like hurt them, because my youngest daughter is a gymnast, and we were in her competition. I flew home. No, I flew back to where I came from. And then I my daughter thought that she did poorly. She's crying. You know how an athlete is, about when you know that you did poorly and you're gonna cry in the sidelines, and it's like that.
Yeah.
So I was trying to console her, and I go like, we're gonna work harder and everything like that. We're just gonna train some more. We're gonna do this and everything like that. And then my other daughter chimes in, and she goes like dead straight to my face. She goes, "Who's gonna take her to training? You're not here." Damn! Like right in front of my ex-husband and his mom. We were all like that. Like we were just like, and I just, dude, like I think I was early in recovery when that happened. And
Oh, that must have hurt.
it hurts so bad because, like, here I am consoling one, and the other one is staring me dead in the face.
Mhm.
You're, what are you doing? What are you trying to do?
Trying
Right?
to do. Yeah.
What are you trying to do? Right? You're not here. It was such a wake up call because, like, my kids are not shy to tell me what they feel anymore. Diba? And I guess I told them that they had the freedom to do that now. But before, I wouldn't give it the time of day. Like, no,
Mm.
it's like, and I I know they're little bitches because I was yeah,
Hey, hey.
my kids are jerks sometimes. They're complete jerks. Like, and I know they got it from me.
Your
And
karma.
that's it. And when you say, if you want to call it that, the karma, right? Karma, and then, like, you're more aware. I'm clean and sober, and these little shits are just, I'm just like, oh my god, they got it from me.
Yeah.
Mm.
How and
Where else were they supposed to get it from,
right?
huh?
Where else are they gonna get it?
It's called a
Like,
Apple
factory
did
defect.
the
It's called
apple
factory
doesn't fall
defect.
far from the tree.
exactly,
Yeah.
and that's what's scary because, like, I mean, I'm not new to this program because of my family history, like all my brothers, all of that. And now I'm thinking, like, oh god, they they're this close to just, like, starting when I started.
Yeah.
Mm.
You
That
know what?
must be scary for you, right? Like to
Scary because
have that
in
in the back of your mind.
the back of my head, because they're there, they're right there, and if I don't correct the behavior, if I don't tell them how it's like, but then, like, when I start to tell, okay, this is, I'm in recovery and everything like that, and then they're not shy. You are a monster.
Mm.
Gonna be in the same room as you. But then,
Mm.
like, they make me cambio and go, but you're cool now, so.
But you're cool now.
You're a
Now,
monster,
Cool
but
now. Well, and that's the thing. It's like we were discussing this earlier. Like, are we making them aware of it, or are we exposing them to it?
Yeah.
Oh, and that is that's two different things. Because when you're exposing your kids to something, they don't know what it is. They're just there and they're experiencing it without anything to back it up.
yeah.
yeah,
Like, what the hell is that? Okay, and then when they see it and when they do it when they're older, it's like, oh, this is what it is. And then there's there's just that whole spiral again. The whole
yeah,
cycle will just happen.
Yeah.
But if you make them aware, I hope I did. I mean, even if they saw me fall down the stairs and, sprain my ankle or, like, puke all over the place, I hope I mean, you
Yeah.
know,
yeah.
or
Yeah.
come home
It-
bloodied. But yeah, that they were there when I came home bloodied, and that was
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
My daughter told me, like, I'm never ever gonna get drunk. She told me. And I'm like, I'm like,
there you
Yeah.
go.
I'm like, you're saying
Oh,
There you
now,
go.
when I was in the States and there was that DARE program,
Ah,
Yes.
the
ah,
drug abuse resistance education. And I
Yes.
was like in 6th grade. I was like, I'm never gonna do drugs.
Just say
That's just
no.
stupid.
Yeah.
Just say
thank
no.
you.
Right? What I did drugs, I drank, it's like, I'm just looking at her and I'm like, right? Because I want to make her aware that she has the genes from it, not just from me, but from her dad as well. So now I'm really trying to make her just mindful, because she's like, I'm gonna try it, but I'm not gonna become a drunk like you.
Yeah.
Like, oh, nice, right?
Nice.
But yeah, but I want her to be aware of it. I always tell her, like, okay, these are, what happened to me. That's why she's like, I'm never gonna be a drunk like you. But I'm like, you never know, just be mindful because your dad is also an alcoholic and he also is also an addict. And your mom is an alcoholic. So there's a chance that we're gonna pass it down to you. So, but you know better, because now your dad's doing well and I'm doing well and she's like, yeah, mom, I really, but like, with her, she's 11, but she talks to me like she's 16. You know, she's very much advanced and she remembers everything, you know, but not
Yeah.
okay. So anyway, the thing with her, it's like her dad and I basically took turns. So when she was a baby until she was about 7 years old, her dad was the one that was like going on a rampage, you know, with drugs and alcohol and everything. I stayed sober. And then when he decided to get better, for some reason, I was the one. I was like, oh, it's my turn. It's my turn. So, you know, but the problem is, and what makes it so unfair is that she doesn't remember when her dad was fucking up. She remembers me because, like, from 7 to 10, okay, the 3 years, there we go, right? She remembers it all. She remembers when I was like throwing things here. She's like, oh, mom, remember when you destroyed all the plants in the house? You know, like all of these things. And it just seems like I'm always trying to make up for those times. You know, like it's up to now, you know, and I've been telling Carbs and I've been telling Rio, like, you know, when my daughter's like, it's just that I'm also overcompensating, you know, because
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. You know, I'm trying to prove to her that I'm a good mother now,
Yeah.
you know, because I just like, I really had the worst relapse, you know, and now it's like when she says jump, I jump. When she says, mom, you have to participate in the fun run. I had the flu. I ran. Okay. And I won a medal for her, you know, like everything na lang. Like, mom, I want this. Even if I don't have money, I'll find the money to buy it for everything she wants. I give it. And I know that that's my issue. You know, I have to work on that because I haven't completely forgiven myself. You know, I
Yeah.
really haven't. And I think that's what's causing that overcompensation like all the time. And then there's resentment because as an 11-year-old acting like a 16-year-old, her hormones, right? Like I wake up, good morning, and she's like, ugh, like, ugh. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, good morning. She's just like giving me a bad look. You know, like, what did I do? Then I start playing out. It's because I'm a bad mother. It's because of like, wow, it's like all of these issues, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh, it's because you love your dad more than me. Like, wow, like I really just, I have to stop. Like, seriously, because I'm fucking her up more with all of this because of my insecurities. I'm projecting everything on her. And sometimes she's just in a bad mood. Like any other kid, like us. We're also in a bad mood sometimes, right? We're, you know, so like
Sometimes.
sometimes,
There you go.
no, no, a lot of the
Sometimes.
times.
Like, I wonder if they,
Sometimes
I wonder
lang.
if they, you know, I wonder if they feel or they notice that sometimes we overcompensate, and I wonder if like they're like, oh God, she's so annoying. She's
My
like here
kids
all
do.
the time.
No, my
They
kids
know,
do.
Really?
right? I
Yeah, they
think
told
they
me.
do.
They've
They
called me out.
know.
They know
Wow.
they're not shy about like they know how they can manipulate me. They tell me how like
Mm.
they'll have discussions about, you know, oh, like he's okay with you, so you go approach him so we can
Yeah,
get this thing together.
exactly.
Like which I kind of
Ah,
I like the fact that they have teamwork, you know, and
Yeah.
I tell them that it's really cute, but they're aware. They're aware. But it is there too. I think so. Barbie and Carbs, like I recently told you, one thing that I'm dealing with now with guilt is like we brought my son in to get assessed recently, and we found out that he's ADHD. And so
Okay.
now again, like I'm, you know, it's less today, but immediately and for days afterwards, I was rolling back the clock and like all the times that I was impatient, intolerant, unkind, you know, because I thought just you're not fucking listening. Like get a, you know, just like I'd bring the hammer down so quickly on him. And then now that I know he has a diagnosis, right? It's like, oh, I could have been more patient. Not that I should need a diagnosis to tell me that, but
yeah.
there's the overcompensation. So like in the last couple of weeks, and he told me, he knows, he's like, you know, you don't have to be that sweet. Like he gets it, but I've been extra sweet. I've been extra like,
Yeah.
because just trying to, and with the two of them too, between him and his little sister, you know, it's I'm never gonna admit to like favoritism, but I think that it's easy that there's the easier kid who's
Ye-
just
Yes.
for whatever reason. And That's part of the shame now.
Carbs, like, yes.
You're yes.
There's an easier kid. There's always the easier kid. What are you talking
Yes.
about?
Yeah.
I think it happens in all families.
Yeah, because one plays off of the other, right?
Yeah.
I was not the easier kid, so and
Let's
then
see,
there
like,
was another
I
sibling that
wasn't
benefited.
I was the worst one. So
I think I was the best one. Sorry, guys. No.
Wow, huh?
Then
Wow.
look what happened,
Yeah.
right? I was an easy, honestly, I was a very easy kid. Good grades, obedient, quiet. Look what happened. No, but I like what
sa
you're
loob ang kulo.
Oo
Just
nga.
kidding.
No, but I like what you're saying because my second child also, I have three, right? So my second daughter, she's what I call my guilt baby because
Guilt
I
baby.
found out with my two other kids, I was completely sober during my pregnancies. But with my second child, I found out I was pregnant. I was already 4 months in, and I was really heavy on Valium at the time and everything else.
Mm.
And she's different. She's different. I noticed as she got older, she has speech disabilities, like she couldn't speak well. So my frustration, like when she would talk to me, and of course I was high as a kite, I'd be like, "What are you trying to say? What? What?" I'd be like that.
Mm.
And I
Oh.
know, you know what, like I know I should be embarrassed. I'm in a freaking podcast right now. It's very shameful to speak about it, but for those listening that may have been going or who are going through these things as well, as a parent, it's like either okay, I behaved this way because I was scared. I
Mm.
didn't know how to express myself well and say what is happening to her. I can't deal with it on my own. Like I said, I'm a single parent, right?
Mhm.
So
Mm.
growing up, it was like that. Um, she, I remember 2 years ago, she had an activity in school, and it was a TLE activity. And the picture, you're supposed to depict what's in the picture. It's a drawing. So the drawing was there was a woman and then a kid with earphones, and the mom was like this, holding her hips. So that the question there was what's in the picture? What's the picture trying to say? And she wrote, and the teacher sent this to me. Huh? I was already clean. This is 2 years ago. That it said there, the child. There's different stories. She wrote down, I think, three. She said the child is being ignored, so she is using her headphones. The second one was nobody wants to play with a child, so she's just listening to music. And then the last was the child is sad because the mother is calling her useless. And my heart, I was like,
Mm.
so I started to cry. And I was like, oh my gosh, right? The way I speak kasi, I'm like you, Pirate Mike. I'm very opinionated, I'm very active with my kids. Like I treat them like adults, which I know isn't also correct, right? But I was like, I'm a potty mouth, right? And when the teacher sent me this, of course I was so defensive and a bit afraid, like, oh no, what will they think of me? But
Mm.
the worst part was my kid remembers this. So
Yeah.
of course I spoke to her and I said, Gabby, what's this? And then she started to cry. And I'm like, no, don't cry. I'm not getting mad. I just want to understand. She's like, is this in your memory? No, no, I think somebody called me useless before. And I said, Gab, let's be honest. It was me. I used to call you that. I used to call everybody that. But see, I didn't mean it. Sometimes adults, sometimes we say stuff that we don't mean, especially when we're, not in a good headspace. And I'm really sorry, like I'm not that person anymore. And so
Mm.
she hugged me, like, and we made up for. But I was like, I carried on to that so long. And even like what you were saying a while ago, I saw the differences in my child, like in my children. Like I saw that okay, this kid can't verbalize properly, can't express properly. When there are loud sounds, she goes like this, or like when she eats something spicy or even sour, like she'll cover her ears. She always needs two toys. I was like, something's not right. But I was struggling with the fact that if I bring her to get assessed and there's something wrong, it's my fault.
Mm.
Oh,
My
yeah.
fault, right? I did
Yeah.
something
Yep,
during
yep.
pregnancy. I wasn't, I was using and all these things.
Yeah.
So it's gonna reflect on me. That was my first thought. But then I challenged that thought and said, that's done already. I have to give
Mm-mm.
her the help that she needs. I need to find out if there's something wrong so I can address it properly and it could help her as early as now. So I did. With that shame, I brought her
Mm.
in, and she's not in the spectrum, but she does have a learning disability. Like she needed OT and speech therapy and all that.
Mm-mm.
Today she's thriving. But like as a parent, diba, like I did beat myself up a lot. Like today I still struggle with forgiving myself. And just when
Mm-mm.
I think that I have, it comes back.
Yeah.
Right. Now, like you guys were asking me what's the difference of being a parent back then when I was still using and today. Today, I believe that yes, they picked up a lot when I was still using because of the way I absentee mother. I learned how not to say bad mother anymore. My sponsor taught me that. It's like you are sick, then you change the word bad because you're not a bad person. You just had bad habits. So I said,
Oh.
okay, absentee mother. Yeah. Self-love, So like I remember my first few months of being clean, my eldest, she was 7 na nga. And I was trying to put eye drops on her. She didn't want. And she said, yeah, of course she's a baby, diba? She doesn't, who wants to put something in their eye? And she said,
Mm.
I don't want you. I hate you. And I was just like, oh my heart, like I'm clean. Diba? But it's about eye drops. I was like maybe 7 months or 6 months in. And I was just
Mm.
like, fine. Let your eyes get red. But I started crying in the bathroom and I was telling her like an aunt, like, that hurts. But you
Yeah.
know what? She knew it hurt and she was hurt. Because later on she told me I didn't mean it. Imagine for a 7-year-old, like I feel like because of the way I was, they matured too quickly. The way I
Mm.
did, because my parents were also alcoholics and addicts.
Yeah.
Right? Then the second child will say stuff that I call her useless. I say bad words. So she thinks all these things. My youngest, who, like I said, I got clean. She was only 2, so barely was she
Mm.
right. Like she was hardly affected,
Mm.
but her self-esteem is sometimes it's also messed up. And I don't know, like sometimes is it my fault? Because I really wonder, like, wait a minute, I was okay already, or I was trying to be okay already. Why are you affected, right? Because she says stuff like self-hatred. Like she told me one time, and she's 7, she's 8 today now. And I've shared this with you guys before. She gave
Yeah.
me the finger,
Oh, that's
and
right.
she said,
Oh,
right?
yes, I love that story.
That, and then like the wind was,
Yeah.
and she said, you're the reason why I have self-hatred. Big words for a child, right? And I was just like, what did I do to you? Out of all my 3 kids, I spoiled her the most. So
Mm.
see, she's a perfectionist. She doesn't when she gets frustrated in class, she shuts down. She needs to be perfect. She needs to. So I worry sometimes because having all this knowledge with Codependence Anonymous and these other programs, other fellowships. Sometimes, since I know all these, I have all this information. I'm stuck with the knowledge of the programs and all these things. Sometimes I overanalyze the situation rather than just sit with it and accept it. That okay, my
Mm.
kid's not well today. Like what you said earlier, Barbie, like they're in a bad mood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not my fault. It's not my fault. I'm so quick
Mm.
to blame myself when something bad goes on in the house. I'm so quick to try to fix it. Or like what you said, even about overcompensating. Now, sometimes, wait a minute. I'm a parent. I'm a healthy parent today. I'm allowed to discipline my kids in a healthy manner, right? I won't
Yeah.
hit them. I won't anymore curse or anything like that. But I also have to set boundaries and stand my ground because if I continue to overcompensate or spoil or let things go just because I have that guilt of, oh shit, I wasn't there for them. Sige, I'll let this slide when I see bad behavior. What's that
Mm.
going to do to them as they get older?
Yeah,
It's
that's
wrong
also,
parenting.
yeah,
It's
it's
hard,
doing them a disservice as well.
doing them a disservice. And like sometimes I also have to remember that I am not in control. My higher power is. And he's in charge of their journeys as well.
Mhm.
The only thing I can do now that I'm in recovery is to set an example, right? And like what Carbs was saying earlier about awareness and exposure. I remember my father and my godfather, they're both alcoholics. One day I think I was in I think high school or college, and they were discussing, they're both drunk and discussing about, my uncle was telling my dad, Yaki, you show your kids too much about what you do, like you tell them about the drugs and the alcohol, and that's wrong. You shouldn't show them, you should hide it from them. Blah, blah, blah. And my dad was saying, why will I hide it from them when it's the real world? It's in there. They're gonna come across it anyway. And I took that along with me and I carried that because it's true enough. I discovered it,
Yeah.
and I didn't, whatever tools I had, they were kulang-kulang, it was
Mm.
lacking. And I went to the other side. Luckily I came back. But see now my kids, like Izzy's 13. Oh, gonna be 13. They're of age. I have my brother, he shelters his kids a bit. Not shelter, sorry. Sorry, Naj. Like he screens the movies or he screens the shows because he's aware that okay, these kids are still so young. They have their minds are still formative.
Mhm.
They can pick up on ideas and
Oh,
take it the right
definitely.
way, right?
Yeah.
But me kasi, especially with my dad, what I heard from my dad and what I've come to know is that look, the real world is the real world. We're all gonna have these strange ideas. But if I equip my kids with the right tools, then they're gonna cope with it properly. This let's not go with the whole woke, anti-woke thing because I think four of us have different opinions on that. But like with regards to addiction, alcoholism, drug use, even codependency. Okay, kids, this is what I've gone through, right?
Yeah.
You add the biological factor, the environmental factor, the genetics, and all these things, the trauma, right? If you look at my checklist with all of the etiology of addiction, I checked them all. My kids, not so much. So, they have a chance. They have a chance. And I just tell them, look, this is what it is. When I go to meetings, my recovery meetings, most of the time they're here in the room and sometimes they're listening, sometimes they have earphones on.
Yeah.
They ask me questions and I answer to the best of my ability, right? Because that's my job, that's my responsibility. Okay, guys, the world is not so beautiful as the fairy tales, right?
Yeah.
So what do you want to do, especially when you're of age? It's out there. Dude, in some high schools, they're smoking the freaking banyos, right? These
Mm.
people getting pregnant at the age of what? Correct? So
Yeah.
I gotta teach my kids, okay, this is the real world. I'm not gonna shelter you from it. I'm gonna equip you with the tools. And hopefully, please God, hopefully you use these tools.
Yeah, well,
But
you're walking with them, which I think is the most
yeah,
important, I mean,
yes,
Mm.
thank you.
sometimes, yeah, I'll agree, like treating them like they're not kids, might I probably gotten in
Back
trouble with
then,
that as well, but then I also don't dismiss them. And I think that
yeah,
that just creates an environment for better dialogue,
yeah.
so because I have seen what happens when kids are kind of just relegated to the space where it's like, you don't involve them in the conversation
Mm.
or
Of
the
course, there's a
discussion.
balance, no, Mike? Like,
Yeah,
okay,
Like the kids
childhood
table.
and well, real
but it
life.
starts with being present. And so like
Yeah,
I'm in a better
Yeah.
position to play with that balance if we're
yeah,
if we're on the same page and if they're part of the conversation, as opposed to if I just shove them in the room and
yeah,
say like no, you know. And it is much better today. Like I know for the better part of this hour, been talking about things like shame and I think it's important because as people in recovery, it's a recurring theme. I hear it all the time from people who have kids, maybe
yeah,
not even as much in terms of like the current shame. But then there's also like as I've grown in my own recovery, I know I'm doing it right because of the things that they see. So it's a bad thing that they've seen certain things. It's also a good thing that they see certain things when they um my son,
Yeah.
when he talks about how he sees my life in recovery today, he tells me he's proud, you know,
Oh,
he's
Aw.
he's proud of what I've been doing.
Oh.
He's proud of this
yeah.
podcast. Like he found the I don't think we've ever talked about this on in recording. But Barbie, like you helped us make these mugs, these coffee mugs, for the podcast.
Yeah.
And
Here we
so
go.
he found it and he was like, I didn't know you had this, you should make
Oh.
more. Are you going to be selling merch? So we're not going to be selling merch anytime soon. But he's like, you should mass produce these and maybe you would sign them and then give them out at a
Oh,
convention.
yeah.
And I'm like, I know, he's just so like, he's such a
Oh, I
cheerleader.
love
But it's to the
him.
point where
My
it's to the
heart.
point where the skew of the view is like he thinks it's such a positive thing. Last
Yes.
week, one of my sponsees was over the house and they were just like talking. And then he says something like, yeah, well, my parents, they've been telling everybody that they think that one day I'm going to be an AA. And I was like, I don't fucking say that. Who fucking says that? And for him,
Reality, not AA.
for him, he was like, he just sees it as, okay,
Something
maybe it's
positive.
something about that he sees as maybe there's some tendencies and he's got like a wild hair, but he also sees it as something positive because he's seeing a lot of
Yeah.
the positive
Yeah.
things that we've been doing.
Yeah.
And that's
True.
like, so
Like,
I don't want to
yeah.
necessarily burst that pink bubble yet. Like
Yeah.
there's a balance, but it's nice to
Mm.
see that he doesn't see it as like the way that you see it in some okay, Carbs, you introduced us to that sitcom mom, and I think
Yeah.
that's an extreme of how it could be. On the other hand, here's this kid that had to grow up with this still an absentee mom who's sober, but then you could tell that there were years where there was no connection.
Mm.
And so
Yeah.
the regard for like anything that had to do recovery wise probably wasn't that great because mom still wasn't being present.
Correct.
They get to see like a better side of it today, they get to see
Yeah.
how our lives are being enriched, and then the family life is being enriched, and then people get helped,
That's
at
the
the same
thing.
time.
And somebody told me, my counselor told me, he said, yes, you've had that past. Yes, your kids have all these memories, bad memories. But you know what? If you consistently stay clean and sober and be better, you can make new memories.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Okay, whether they forget the bad ones or not, as long as they see them in it. And you're right, like I love the fact that they're proud of who I am.
Yeah.
Like
Mm.
it's weird to say it, but like, diba, like my youngest will say, I want to be like you. Remember there was that one kwento I
I've
told
been
you guys.
waiting. Yeah, please
Yeah, I
go,
was
go.
gonna tell you. Remember that time?
Remember
Okay,
that time?
go.
Like in the kinder graduation when they're like, oh, I'm gonna become an astronaut, I'm gonna become a scientist. My kid, it was her turn. It was her turn. And this was during Zoom, and this during online because it was pandemic. And I was across, I was there on the couch, and she was in front of her computer. And the teacher goes, okay, Alex, it's your turn. And she's like, hi, my name is Alexa, blah, blah. When I grow up, I want to be an addict. I just jumped over the bed and I was mute. I just whacked that mute button and she's like, what? What? And I go, Alex, no, not addict. And the teacher, you could hear the teacher like small teeny voice, like,
Oh my
what was that?
God.
What was that?
What
And
was
then
that?
so they moved on, but then she started to cry. Then I said, Alex, no. And then she goes, but why, mom? I want to be like you. I was
Oh,
just like, oh
see?
my
Yeah.
gosh. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
but don't say counselor. You can say, recovering person, but don't say addict. So later
Yeah.
on, I teach you even about right?
Or
Yeah.
like I want to be a recovery coach or something.
Yeah, but
Not
No, but
like,
like,
I want to be an
interesting.
addict. Yeah, but that
yeah,
shows that, she loves you.
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, and she looks up to you and
And
wants
that's
to
the
be like
gift of
you.
recovery, diba? These are the things that I picked up through my therapy, through my meetings, through the spiritual principles that I've learned through these programs, right? Like, hey, I have a past, but I am not that person anymore. And I can just learn from that past. It doesn't define me.
Yeah.
And,
Mm.
for those that are still struggling out there, especially as a single parent, whether mother or father, for me, it's the same. Single parent to single parent. We all have that shame and guilt. But there's hope. There's hope. And if you find the right people, like to help you get by, like with me, like sometimes I'm just so lost and I reach out to my two girls And I'm like, okay, I'm having a bad day today. My eldest daughter is this and that.
Yeah.
And then they share their experiences with me, or sometimes they just don't, they just listen
Yeah.
and allow
Mm.
me to just vent or cry. And in the end, it's like,
Mm.
I don't have to be alone. You know, I am
Yeah.
single. I mean, I'm not single, I'm taken.
Woo!
I mean, I'm a single parent, but I don't have to be
Yeah.
alone anymore. I have my partner to talk to. I have a
Yeah.
co-parent. I have my besties, you know, and I have my friends. And I don't have, it doesn't have to be as lonely, especially I have a higher power. You know,
right.
I have a God that really, wow, right? So I use these tools because, you know, it can be lonely. It
Yes.
can be lonely. It's very challenging,
Yep.
but it's so fulfilling, guys. Like,
Yeah.
diba? Especially that I'm in recovery. Like, I, my kids also, these experiences, no matter how tough, it's taught me empathy. It's taught me
Mm.
compassion,
There.
love, with
There.
all the, like
Yeah.
Yes.
we were
Yeah.
saying yesterday about unconditional love. Wow.
Yeah. No, you know, ano.
Forgiveness, diba?
Mm.
Peace,
Mm.
all these things. And I learned this from my kids. I learned it from myself. You know, the best gift that this recovery has given me is self-forgiveness. And really, you know, all of these things,
Yeah.
love. Right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if I pass this on to my kids, wow, they're well on their way. That's
That's
it.
true.
Right?
Because you know why?
Yeah.
Okay, like, there's another thing about this recovery. Like we're better for it, better parents, I believe, huh? I believe, like, you know, I like with me, I know how to talk to them. Finally, like I know what can make them open up and stuff like that. Because
Communication, yeah. Yeah.
the communication is much better, and
Yeah.
they're not afraid. Because
Yeah.
that's how it was
Yeah.
before. They were afraid to approach me. They're gonna, if they tell me something, they knew that I was gonna snap, so they'd rather not, you know, just to avoid screaming or whatever, right? When I came across, well, because my youngest was, I'm telling you, because my kids are on that age of experimentation.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so there was beer involved, and, you know, I had to, you know, she got a mouthful from dad, school, and like the grand, everyone around her who was there. And when I found out, I was like, oh shit, here we go, right? I was like,
No. Fasten your
God,
seatbelts.
right? I was like, oh no, it all started like this because you know how it is. I mean, like, how did I start? It was cool. Everybody was doing it, right? And so now that I'm here and I'm like, how the fuck do I handle this? Because nobody handled me when I
Mm.
started. I don't know, diba? And you
Yeah.
know what? Like I spoke to her and I knew she was expecting me to like completely and utterly like, oh yeah, like you know what like that, dude. But then I composed myself and I said, I asked her, what happened?
That's it.
What made you make that decision? Tell me what was running through your head. And she felt heard,
Yeah.
Nice.
felt understood, and I told her, okay, it's like this. And I explained to her, you know what? There are rules in place because you are not equipped to handle situations like this. If you get drunk, if something happens, if somebody, you know, none of you are equipped. This is not supposed to be happening at your age of 14.
Yeah.
Diba? And I'm like thinking,
I'm
God,
like, what were we doing when we were
I was
14?
already,
I was like,
right?
I'm
I
doing the
was like,
math in
oh,
my
I
head
said,
too.
Not doing
Me
the
also,
math.
I was
you
like,
know,
I was in a bar. I
right? I was
bought
like,
a
wait a
smaller
minute. I was
bed.
already like, but then you know, you're there and you know. And then I went back to my experiences and I was like, how could, like, I got away with it, but she didn't and she knows it's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was the premise that she knew
Yeah.
it was wrong. And I had to be the one to explain it to her why.
Yeah.
And I had the tools.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
I didn't just tell her you're freaking grounded until you're freaking 35. You will never go out of the house. No, it wasn't like that. I told her, here's why it's wrong.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
see what happened to me.
Yeah.
And I think like being like a parent, like during recovery, we're able to show our kids that there is hope,
Yes.
like people can change, for the better. Because like, yeah, I was hopeless, for for like the 3 years that, of that really, really bad relapse. And my daughter is able to compare who I was then and
Yeah.
who I am now. Of course,
Mm.
it was a slow, real, every single day I'm trying to overcompensate over obviously, but she gets to see it. She's not stupid, she gets to see how it was before and how it is now, and how I'm now participating in all her school activities, how I tutor her myself, and I know she's grateful. I know that she is. And sometimes I really, like I always feel like, oh, she loves her dad more and she never appreciates anything that I do. But because she's a daddy's girl, it's not because of the past. It's not because I was a drunk. It's just that she's a daddy's girl.
Wala
Period.
kang pagkukulang, oo.
Oh, I was a
Something.
daddy's girl too. I was a daddy's girl too. So I was just like, I started to take it so personally. Sometimes we're just
Mm.
imagining all this shit in our brains, that we're like, oh, why is she treating me like that? Ah, it's because, I treated her badly and like, for so long,
Diba?
whatever. But no, it's just that,
It's the hormones.
yeah, it's the hormones and she's just her
Hormones.
girl
Hormones.
and whatever. And
But it doesn't
recently,
change the fact that it hurts, ah.
yeah,
Yeah.
of course. It
Yeah.
still
Yes.
hurts, but
Yes.
then there are these glimmers, that these little
Mhm.
small moments where she's just like, she's like, oh, mom, because she loves to sing, right? I want to join the workshop of the BGC thing. It's like a theater thing. And I said, well, you're going to the States. And she's like, you're going to the States with your dad for the summer. And she's like, ah. And she's like, well, can I go back to Ryan Kayabyab? Like, what she was doing. She was like, she was like going to school there for voice lessons. And I said, yeah, yeah. And she's like, because mom, you said that, you're trying to work really hard to earn money and everything. And I was like, oh wow, she sees it, she sees what I'm trying to do. And I was like, well, I'll try to make it work, because I'm
Mm.
always like that. I always want to give her what she wants. So I was like, I'm gonna try and make it work. I have this new project coming in, and I really think that I'll be able to afford it, your voice lessons and everything. And she's like, you know what, you and dad work so hard. I can totally see that, dad works so hard, and you also. And I was like, oh, like I was like, "Oh, you're talking about me?" She's like, yes, I can totally see. She goes, I guess, I can totally see that you care about the other people in recovery. She said that. And she said, I
Yeah.
can totally see that you really care about your clients. And I see that you're working so hard, mom. Oh my God. That was like music to my ears. Like for me, that was all I needed to hear. It's just, yeah, it just takes time. You can't expect them to forgive you right away.
Yeah.
You have to show them that you have changed, not just temporarily, but for the better. So yeah, she's beginning to trust me again, and that's good.
The best feeling, no?
My age.
Best feeling.
Yeah.
You're
Wait
like,
till they
just
get
wait.
to the like, it's like, where the hell are you guys, man?
That's where I'm at now with my that's where I'm at with my eldest. Like there are bursts of like, where's my sweet little child? And
Yeah.
you know what's nice about it? I think since we're open and honest and have good communication,
Yes.
she knows, and she texts me like she goes, "Well, I'm sorry, I don't know why I act that way, I don't know why I express myself that way, blah blah blah." And me naman, like I tell her without victimizing or I tell her that what, how you talk to me hurts also, and I know that you can't control it. I know there's like this monster called hormones inside you trying to come out. She's 13. But it hurts when you speak to me that way. So I use the Desi, diba? All these things, right?
That's
And
good.
she's aware of it. And sometimes it's true, she can't control it. And I try to remember, was I like that at that age? Right?
Yeah.
But
Maybe. Yeah.
maybe, but that's the thing, eh. Diba? I'm more with my dad. rather than my mom at that age. So like I was also a daddy's girl, so I don't think I was really so like bitchy. But so I'm there now. And I always think that I'm waiting. Like I say, I always say this. I knew this day would come because I'm a woman also. I know how it is. But I just didn't expect it to come and like, oh, ouch, that stabbed me in the heart. But I'm coping with it well because I'm not picking up, not strangling anybody, I'm not screaming, I'm not making patol. Diba? It's just a process. It's just part of life, diba? And I'm just grateful because on days that she's not hormonal, she's actually so great and I love her. I love all my kids. And I love me today. So yeah. She's there in the closet.
She's there. Nice. Oh, she heard
You're all
everything.
hiding
She
in the
heard
closet.
everything.
Yeah. No, I told her already. I'm gonna talk about UK. Yeah.
Cheers to that.
Yeah, cheers and happy Mother's Day, guys.
Happy Mother's Day, you
Mother's
three.
Day.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Thank
Happy
you.
Mother's
Thank
Day.
you for coming, Rio. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah, we'll have you back soon for sure. This was great.
Wow, thank
Yeah.
you. I had fun. I had fun.
This has been an episode of the Coco Recovery Podcast. If you would like to get in touch with our hosts or guests, please email us at cocorecoverypodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.